Hello and welcome. I'm Bob Laliberte, a Senior Analyst for the Enterprise Strategy Group covering networking, and I'm joined by my colleague Nick Rouda, Senior Analyst covering Big Data. So Nick, I thought in this session we would cover the intersection points of big data and networking as it pertains to the Internet of Things. There's been a lot of talk about the Internet of Things, and clearly we're at the very early stages of that. There's a lot of sound, examples of how it's being used today, but clearly the future points to a time in which we will have a lot more sensors and instrumentation out in the field, from our refrigerators to our toasters to IT gear, et cetera. Everything will be censored. What are the implications for that from a big data perspective?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. If you think about the defining attributes of big data, the volume is clearly going to increase. Think of the number of humans there are in the US. Now think if each of those humans has 10 or 50 different smart devices, each of those is going to be continuously spitting out more data. And whether or not it's interesting to see what my thermostat says every second of the day, we need to make that decision, but certainly the volume is going to increase there, and that's going to have a traffic impact on existing networks. It's not just going to be Netflix traffic in the future. Aside from the volume, there's obviously more variety, more different types of devices, and each one of them is going to have different types of data it's collecting. Maybe it's geospatial, maybe it's time series, maybe it's just log files, maybe it has clicks or interactions of some sort in it. So being able to look at those and compare them to one another, compare them to other external data sources, look at how does weather affect thermostat, affect heating, three different functions, but let's correlate them and start to get a more nuanced understanding so we can build smart grids or better networks or offer customers discounts. Hey, turn your thermostat down couple percent right now, or do it automatically for them. So there's a lot of opportunity here. The volume and variety will continue to grow, and I think we're really on the front end of what's going to be a big explosion as people start to figure out, hey, the data is available, what can I do with that? And I guess my question for you is, how do you see this impacting networking companies? Are they perceiving the opportunity here, understanding the impacts?
Yeah, I think that certainly from the networking vendor perspective, they all realize the potential for the explosive growth of networking bandwidth. And I think the Internet of Things will be based on sensors, networks, and analytics software. I've heard the term thrown out there, the analytics of things. But clearly from a networking perspective, once you've got all these sensors and they're all generating data, you've got to ensure that it's going to be able to get back to that centralized location where the analytics is taking place. And clearly there's going to be different prioritization based on the sensors and what they are. So the networks really have to be intelligent about the data traffic, the types of data that are coming across it, and be able to isolate that, I think, and ensure the appropriate quality of service levels, again, depending on what it's going to be. So again, there's going to be a shift there, but clearly everything that's censored has to be somehow networked, whether that's through a wireless network or a wired network. And then again, there's got to be connectivity back to those, wherever those analytics locations are going to be, whether they're in a data center, a cloud, or potentially, eventually, I imagine even in your own house, right? So you could see big data to the home.
Absolutely.
Right, having an application. So
yeah, look at Nest, or look at my smart solar panels metering, and each of those, all of these have potential. And I think it brings back a lot of the same enterprise IT challenges. It just distributes them across a much larger footprint. You have performance concerns. If I have all this data, am I getting it in a timely fashion? Can I process and respond to it quickly? You have availability. Is this something I'm able to monitor 24/7, 365, and be able to handle whatever types of impacts there are to the network or the devices themselves? You think about security. If somebody can tap in and see, are my lights on? Do they know if I'm home or not? So, and security, privacy on those data, and a lot of other concerns. There's maybe not physical security, but data security comes in, and so governance has implications for that. And I think not least cost becomes really a factor. I mean, it's great, we can generate all this data, we can do a lot of new things with it, analytics are going to give us insights, but is that cost efficient? I mean, one of the big enablers of big data has been the ability to cost effectively store all this data, but to your previous point, being able to transport it across the network, being able to offer that in a way that works for consumers, works for remote branch offices, works for all these different locations that are going to have machine-generated dense data, sensor data, all these different types in all these new locations. I think that's going to be a big both driver and inhibitor of adoption of Internet of Things.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's going to be based on, for a lot of the enterprises that are looking at the Internet of Things, it's going to be that, what's that return on investment going to be? Are they going to be able to drive sufficient efficiencies by collecting this data, analyzing it, and moving it forward? I think you could argue that certain shipping companies have done a great job with taking in the concept of Internet of Things and being able to drive tremendous efficiencies and get tremendous gains out of doing that. So I think certainly from that supply chain point of view, the Internet of Things has a lot of different implications. And then eventually, I think, as you mentioned with Nest and other things, it has implications across the entire enterprise even, right? Where organizations can be intelligent about, like you had said, even knowing when employees are coming to work, turning lights on, turning lights off, right?
Yeah.
Just things like that, this overall driving greater efficiencies across the entire organization.
Yeah. And you'll see technology changes that parallel that. I mean, I'm sure in your own space you see new networking protocols emerging, low energy consumption, on, off, different states they need to manage depending upon the environment, the location, how it's being used. So I think we're poised to see a lot of change here in the vendors and the customers who can figure out how to make advantage of this. It's still early days, but it's going to have a big impact on their business.
And it's going to be very interesting to watch it all develop.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, hey everyone, thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.